Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it's time for another breakfast chat because these seem to be pretty popular, and a lot of times it's easier for me to just knock these out while I'm waking up eating my breakfast. Today is bison white rice and eggs with cranberry juice. I was not going to see a lot of variation here. I don't have a lot of variation in my diet. So another thing that came up quickly, a lot of people say, Jason, you're doing these ultra early in the morning. It's got to be like 2 a.m. Yeah. And it's because, number one, I go to bed early. Number two, I'm very, very productive in the mornings. I like to get up very early, get a lot of my work done for the day. I like to do most of my client Skypes, if possible, early in the mornings. Weekends is a little bit different, so a lot of times I have them at 9, noon, 1 o'clock, things like that. Try to get client Skypes done early in the morning, especially for my people overseas. Half of my clients are going to be either in Asia or Europe, right? It's a pretty good chunk of my clients. Only about half tend to be in North America. So that being said, those early hours work great for that. I'm really productive. I like to make videos and stuff early in the morning. And because I do have neighbors, and not that many at the moment, but I try to wait to train until it's normal business hours. When people are awake already, I don't want to be waking people up at 4 in the morning lifting weights. I am courteous like that because it can be relatively noisy. I wait till it's already noisy outside, hustle and bustle is happening, there's traffic, lawn people are awake, and then I train. So I tend to eat and then go back to bed. I go back to bed so I can get my 9 hours of sleep total every day. Sorry guys, brief pause there. I had to turn my air conditioner off. So let's talk about size versus strength. And I think when we look at someone like Björnsson, Hafthor, we can throw out all these arguments about leverages, relative strength, everything else. All this stuff doesn't matter when you have 501 kilos on the bar for a deadlift. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit to you guys so that you understand relative strength a little bit better. But at the end of the day, guys like Thor show you that even when your leverages are bad, because a little bit of a belly actually hurts you on the deadlift, it gives you worse leverages. This is a fact. It forces you to take a wider stance, wider grip, like he does, and you will lift less weight. Everyone does it. It's a bad leverage advantage. He's tall. He's 6'8". He's got to move the weight a long distance, yet the guy is so big and has so much muscle mass on his frame. I can assure you he has 50 to 100 pounds of muscle on the top bodybuilders in the world. Promise you he does. His frame is just that big, okay? And those guys are short. So the guy has an enormous amount of muscle tissue. And at the end of the day, when we say size equals strength, we're talking about muscle. Fat hurts you on some lifts and helps you on others. But even then, overall strength, even body fat will add to your powerlifting total, right? It will. It hurts you on some lifts, but it helps you on more than it hurts you on. So then that's from a leverage perspective. Hurts you on the deadlift. But yet, despite all of that, people say, oh, I'm a tall guy, I can't lift much. Really? Tell that to Thor. He deadlifts over 1,100 pounds, okay? With bad leverages. He doesn't have good leverages for the deadlift. He's just that big. And the deadlift is a test of brute strength. So a lot of times people come up, what about relative strength? How much this person lifts more than this one at this body weight? Well, you have to remember with relative strength, usually relative strength means that you're short. Strength just means a production of force against an external object. So when people say absolute strength, they mean the same thing as strength. It's because they're comparing relative strength to absolute. So they're trying to make caveats. So they have to change the name of strength to absolute strength, which is just nothing to do with what you weigh, your age, nothing else. No classes, just what can you lift is strength. But we'll call that's called absolute strength. And I'll give you guys a perfect example because people will come in and I've had people say, hey, you're at this body weight. How come Jeff Nippard and Alpha Destiny bench press more than you? And I think that's a fair question because they do bench press more than me. Not by an enormous margin, but it is there. Bigger than them. I out squat and out deadlift them by an enormous margin though. Put that in perspective. So if we were to throw us into a powerlifting meet with full classes and go off Wilks score, which does relative strength, I would win. I'd still beat them in a meet. Even cross-class comparisons. But that being said, they do bench more than me. Why? Well, couple of things to look at. I've got a pretty big chest, but those guys technically have bigger pectorals than me, right? They're both 5 to 6 inches shorter than me, so the weight difference is going to be in their advantage. Shorter guys always win on relative strength. Like, I will never catch those guys pound for pound on the bench, even if my bench passes them on absolute. I have very long arms. They both have short arms. Long arms puts you at a disadvantage, and they have big pectorals. So let's come down to it. The body weight side, they're short. Therefore, they're going to weigh less than other lifters of comparable strength. They'll lift the same amount of weight. They can do it with less body weight. Now, it's not an excuse. I need to bring my bench up. I'm working on it. I'm working on bringing up my chest and triceps. Because let's come back over to it. They have a leverage advantage. Okay? They have a leverage advantage. They both have much shorter arms than me. The weight moves a shorter distance. But they both have very big, well-developed pectorals. Right? They both do. What's the primary mover on the bench? Pecs. Triceps also. Those are your two big muscles. Okay? Those are what really move the weight in the bench press. Let's come back over to that guy, whatever UFC or whatever powerlifter. I can't get his name right. Whatever, the guy who weighs $160 and is benching 400 plus. Look at the size of his pecs. He has enormous pecs. Now, keeping in mind, the bench press is a very specialized lift that doesn't use as much muscle through the whole body as other lifts. So you can get away with having a lighter body weight sometimes and having a big bench if you are big in the right places. And a guy who has a massive chest, who practices heavy benching and gets the technique down, is going to have a big bench press. Now let's come back over to that point. Size equals strength. Now, overall size is really going to affect total body movements, like the squat and the deadlift that use most of the muscles through the body. It's really going to matter at a serious level there. And we come back over to that point. Even though I'm taller with a leverage disadvantage, I out squat and out deadlift both of those guys. I have bigger legs, a bigger back, bigger glutes than they do. Therefore, I lift more on those lifts, even though I have to move the weight a shorter distance. Just like Thor out deadlifts all of us, even though he's moving that weight one hell of a distance. He's just that big. He's got that much muscle. Okay, it's pretty straightforward. But we come back over to a smaller lift like the bench press. It's just not a super small lift. It's still a very, very big exercise, and it still uses a component of lower body and leg drive. Just it's not that big of a deal. If the muscles involved as the primary movers are big enough, you'll have a big bench. Look how many bodybuilders out there still have a really, really, really big bench press. 500-pound benches and stuff. Pretty common in pro bodybuilders. Why? They have massive pecs and triceps. It matters. It matters a lot. So size still equals strength. How about the strict curl contest? Look at the guys who hit amazing strict curls. They have big biceps. Why? Because size equals strength. And that size equals strength potential, because it is potential. It's not guaranteed that you're going to be stronger. It is strength potential. If you're big overall, you're going to tend to be real good and have a lot of potential once you practice things and get used to maxing at big lifts. But when we're dealing with individual exercises, little smaller movements, let's say the bench press, if you have big pecs and big triceps, you're going to have a lot of potential on the bench press. If you have really big biceps, you're going to have a lot of strength potential on the strict curl. Leverages matter to all these things, because again, we just gave the example of those guys have much shorter arms than me, but they have big pecs. They do have big pecs, and it matters. It matters in this context because the size equals strength. We're talking about your muscles. A bigger muscle has more strength potential. So if you build your pecs up really, really big, I don't care whether it's with weighted dips or whatever you're using to do it, it's going to carry over to your bench press. At least your potential, if your technique is good and you know how to max and you train for neuromuscular efficiency. Okay? And if you're big overall, someone like Thor, you're going to have the strongest deadlift in the world. And I venture to say that probably based upon what we see with the leverages, if we were to DEXA scan every top strength athlete in the world, I would venture to say that that Hafthor probably would have the most lean tissue. He probably has more total lean tissue on his frame than any other athlete in the world. I would bet that that's the case. So hopefully that makes sense to people. All right, guys, so that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.